It is now 16:02. I'll call the July 15th, 2021 meeting of the Wolfeboro Police Commission to order. At this time, I will entertain a consideration of minutes from the June 17th, 2021 meeting.
I would offer that for approval.
Okay. We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien to approve the minutes as written. Seconded by Officer Coop. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, at this time, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Monthlies.
Yes, so going to the first slide in your deck, you're going to see the incidents year-to-date 2021. We had a slight increase from 51 to 59 incidents with 71 offenses, so that's an increase of 15.68%. And that's typical of what we see in the summertime for incident criminal activity for the month of June. So again, this is for the folks just dialing in or not used to this presentation. We're reporting on the June statistics. It's the month of July. We're not fully done with the month of July. So arrest year-to-date 2021, as of the month of June, is a slight decrease from 51 in May to 40 in June. So that's a decrease of 21.59%. So again, typical of what we see in the month of June. You gentlemen have the drill down information and the backup data if you want to see what those arrests were. And it is broken down by officers so you can see who's making what arrests. Traffic stops year-to-date 2021. We are down slightly, 9.55%. From 356 stops to 322 stops in the month of June. 9 summonses were handed out. That's a 2.79% chance of getting a summons. The reason I say that is because most of our traffic stops are educational and not punitive in nature, and that in keeping with our community policing protocols and standards that we have in the Wolfeboro Police Department. You gentlemen have the background data and all the backup data in terms of where those stops were and what streets they were on and what was the offense. The next slide in your deck will be for the collisions year-to-date. Skip that. And you'll see we had a slight decrease. We went from 12 in May to 11 in June, so we're heading in the right direction. That's an 8.33% decrease. And you have the next slide will show where those crashes were. And again, it is not without exception that most of the crashes are occurring on our heavily traveled streets, Center Street being one of the primary culprits. Center Street is heavily patrolled. That is between 28 South and Center Street, those are probably the two most heavily patrolled roads that we have, and they do account for a vast majority of our crashes. Next slide in your deck is going to be the officer activity year-to-date. So you can see every member of the police department and their activity across a number of different metrics. Just keep in mind that when you're looking at this, remember that some officers, like one of our new officers, Joshua Peasley, is working the midnight shift. And although I think the midnight shift is a dangerous shift in terms of no backup available, it is not a busy shift per se. So it's not dangerous because it's a busy shift. It's dangerous because bad things always happen at night. And that's a point in time where we have very few police resources available. Moving on, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready, I'll go into the detective's summary.
Yes, please.
So 17 cases were carried over from May 2021. For the month of June, Detective Emerson investigated 5 new cases. These cases below represent all the incident and arrests for the month of June. And I will say, before I move on, that Detective Emerson, and especially Staff Sergeant Guy Maloney, did absolutely phenomenal yeoman's work on the cat mutilation case that many of us have seen reported by the press release that came out from the county attorney, and then later a more detailed press release came out from the Conway Daily Sun and the Laconia Daily Sun. And people have been coming up to me and mentioning that they've read the summary of the investigation and have provided accolades to the local police department. Very grateful that we arrested that individual, and how disturbed they were reading the newspaper article. And no, and I will tell you, gentlemen and lady, sitting here at the table, that no one is more bothered and disturbed by this than Staff Sergeant Maloney and Detective Emerson. It was a tough case. We had no leads to go on initially. This was good old-fashioned police work. Cameras were installed in various areas to try to figure out who it was. And it took us a solid 18 months of solid investigative work every day, at night, moving out in the hours of limited visibility so as not to be detected, to install surveillance devices so we could try to narrow the suspects down. Those two officers did a remarkable job, in my opinion, and I want to call special accolades to Staff Sergeant Maloney, who was very diligent and just did a phenomenal job, in my opinion, at really tying up all the loose ends and getting this individual arrested and brought to justice. What will happen, I don't know. This is in the hands of the county attorney at this point, and that's all I'm going to say. I do want to mention that it was a very traumatic case for those officers to investigate. It was very disturbing. So we'll move on from there. All 5 cases were investigated at the felony level. June was a busy month for Detective Emerson. Of notable importance, he assisted with the arrest of a male subject, Brendan Elwell, who was involved in a systemic level felony cruelty to animals case that has been under investigation for just over a year and a half. Detective Emerson helped by executing search warrants on residences of the subject once he was arrested by members of the Wolfeboro Police Department and taken to the Carroll County House of Corrections. The following work is time-consuming work that is not reflected in the case numbers investigated by Detective Emerson, but is a common duty for any detective because of trusted relationships built with other departments and agencies. Specifically, Detective Emerson assisted the Bartlett Police Department with the death resulting cases being handled by the Bartlett Police Department. Additionally, Detective Emerson also assisted New Hampshire State Police Major Crimes Unit with information gathering for a cold case they are investigating. Furthermore, Detective Emerson worked with DTF units and was tasked with gathering intelligence and interviewing persons of interest in investigations they are pursuing. So again, these are common tasks that are not necessarily reflected in the cold realities of numbers that we'd like to put up on the board and show. So I just want to throw that out there for the public's consumption. Cases inside investigated also include 1 theft of services by deception, 1 forgery, 1 elderly abuse case, 1 cruelty to animals that have resulted in arrest, and 1 sexual assault. Percentage of cases closed this month is 40%. Percentage of new cases closed by arrest this month is 20%. Percentage of entire caseload closed so far this year is 62%. So those are actually pretty good numbers, and I'm very pleased with the work Detective Emerson is churning out on a monthly basis. Mr. Chairman, there's no SRO report as school is out. With your permission, I'll move into the chief's items.
Yes.
Thank you. I do have one, sir.
Are we doing all the chief's items, or are we going to be doing the budget review? Or?
We're doing all the chief's items, and then we're sliding right into the budget review.
Okay.
So, gentlemen, I do have one item for non-public session regarding a presentation for a change to the personnel and uniform policy.
Understood.
So, general budget items. Following the chief's items presentation, there will be an end of second quarter FY21 budget review. This briefing will mark the halfway point of the FY21 budget execution. Also tied to this will be a status of the Wolfeboro PD report, which will discuss our FY21 goals and objectives at the halfway point of our budget. For the public's information, I produce each year a goals and objectives report, which outlines our annual goals and objectives. This document forms the basis of our FY budget requests to the town each year. In short, My budget is tied directly to our goals and objectives. Additionally, I also briefed the initial stages of the FY22 budget construction process. Presently, I'm happy to report that I have no major issues with the FY21 budget, though we were only just at our halfway point at the time of this writing. Please keep your fingers crossed. As always, I will continue to keep the Commission informed. The budget appears to be moving along fine and with no major issues forecasted at this time. Bottom line up front, the PD is still underspent, and I will keep the Commission informed. Folks, stay tuned. There will be a more detailed report after the rest of the Chief's items. Personnel, with the retirement of Corporal Jason Boucher effective 1 August 2021, we will be starting Officer Joshua Oswald on 2 August 2021. And we will be back up to full strength. As he is an already certified officer we acquired from Rochester PD, thank you, Rochester. I expect a very short FTO process. Corporal Boucher will be staying on with us as a part-time officer.
I'd just like to add to that, Chief, that we were very fortunate that Officer Oswald came to us, and you know, he interviewed very well, he presents very well. I think he's going to fit into Wolfeboro perfectly. His demeanor, his approachability, I have every confidence that the public will like him.
And the fact that he was in the United States Army as an infantryman has no bearing on the fact that I like him already. In terms of police investigations and operations, the month of June has shown us a significant uptick in activity. This can be seen in our monthly activity reports I just briefed. The department also remains involved in a 5-car motor vehicle crash investigation on South Main Street. We have reached out to the state's former toxicologist for some opinions regarding impairment in this crash, and there will be more to follow. So we are moving along in the right direction. This is a complex investigation, and we definitely need to get some expert opinions on this before we move forward. As the Commission knows, we made an arrest in the feline mutilation case. Mr. Brendan Elwell was arrested by Staff Sergeant Guy Maloney, and a press conference was cut by the County Attorney's Office earlier this month. I'm sorry, press release was cut by the County Attorney's Office earlier this month. In terms of police prosecutions, this past month we were busy. We had 16 defendants respond to 18 charges. Of those charges, 12 were found or pled guilty at trial. 6 others were placed on file pending good behavior and restitution and other classes as part of their agreement. The conviction rate this past month is 100% with $5,766 in fines, restitutions, and penalties meted out by the courts. Safety and security matters. We have already seen an increase in traffic volumes, and they are at historic highs for this time of year in Wolfeboro. Lastly, during significant weather events, if you don't have to go out, don't. A vast majority of our crashes occur during periods of inclement weather. Plan for needs ahead of time. These storms can wreak havoc. Please cancel non-important appointments or events if possible. Stay home and please be safe. Dispatch, I have nothing significant to report. Motor vehicle enforcement. In an effort to mitigate the traffic crashes we realize monthly, we will be continuing a strong proactive approach to motor vehicle enforcement and traffic stops. This can be seen in our monthly briefing slides. As a warning to those residents in the North Wolfeboro area, I've received many complaints about speeders on College Road and Stride Road. We will be conducting aggressive speed reduction patrols in those areas of town, so please, if you are in a habit of speeding up there, don't. Lastly, we continue to deploy assets and patrols for identified problem areas. Safety first. That being said, the department is continuing its enhanced speed enforcement operations in the following areas: Lana Street, Forest Road, Cotton Valley, College Road, Stoddard Road, Beach Pond Road, with a focus on the area between Pine Hill Road and North Line Road, Center Street, North Main Street, 109 East, Bay Street, and Sewell Road. The reason for these speed enforcement operations is due to citizen complaints and data collected and analyzed by our radar trailer. We will continue our efforts in these areas until we are sure that the speeds have come down. If you travel these roads, please be mindful of the posted speed limits. Lastly, speeding represents a danger on town roads. All of our roads are posted accurately. Our speed limit signs and radar warning devices are there to keep drivers safe. Recently, during a road patrol at Bay Street, I stopped a young 17-year-old driver who, in my opinion, was racing one of our posted radar warning signs, and I observed the vehicle moving at what I estimated to be well above 70 miles an hour. That individual was stopped and written several tickets for speed and negligent driving. I will be seeking to have his driving privileges revoked by the state's DMV. Please let this stand as a warning to those who wish to partake in this dangerous practice. I said last month, if I catch you speeding on our roads or racing our radar warning signs, you will be issued several summonses and have your license to drive revoked. A license is a privilege, not a right. Please obey the posted speed limit signs. They are there for your safety and that of the public. So I know I read that last month. I thought it was worthy of reading again because that practice is so dangerous, and I am not backing off of what I said. If I catch you doing something like that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Training, Sergeant Strock attended K-9 training this past week. Staff Sergeant Maloney did a week-long training in death investigations. Also, the Staff Sergeant and I were invited once again to conduct technical crash reconstruction training at the New Hampshire Police Academy. It was hot. Everybody had fun. Okay, I had fun. The recruits not so much. As of the end of March, almost all the PD members have met their annual training requirements in terms of non-discretionary training. Matters of outreach and of interest. Staff Sergeant Maloney and I headed back to the New Hampshire Police Academy on 4 and 7 June respectively to teach Block 0 of the Technical Crash Reconstruction course to the recruit class. It was very hot. Fun was had by all. Both the captain and I met with concerned citizens regarding a wide range of issues and community topics. As you know, I'm conducting a weekly radio talk show with Eric Scott of WASR. The show is a 1-hour feature with a call-in, and we discuss relevant topics of interest. Please be our guest on the show each Monday at 12 noon. Please call in and ask your questions or join in the discussion. Let's get involved and solve community issues or simply have a good time. All are welcome. Both the captain and I attended a wide range of budget-related and town meetings with various groups and committees as we proceed through the budget process. Both the captain and I spoke to on Wolfeboro Community TV this past month. Captain Libby continues to be part of the master planning process, the technical review, and joint loss committees. I continue to serve on the Governor's Commission for the Humane and Ethical Treatment of Animals. And lastly, please be our guest on Coffee and Connections with the Chief. Safety tip of the month. It is warming up. However, please keep your eyes and ears tuned on the weather. Summer thunderstorms and flash flooding and lightning can cause injury to those not prepared to deal with the impending storm or severe weather. Because we live on one of the largest lakes in New England, many of our summertime activities are conducted at or near large bodies of water. This can prove dangerous during a thunderstorm. Please be safe and listen to your favorite weather channels and or monitor NOAA weather radio for updates in conducting outside activities. Gentlemen, subject to your questions, that's all I have with the Chief's items.
Oh, I just wanted to jump on, Chief. You made a mention of crashes and weather, and as you recall, we had a vehicle crash on a sewer road just recently that was weather-related, involving some trees that came down.
That was, yeah.
And I just want to say, for the public's knowledge, I've worked 33 years in electrical utility business as a lineman and now in operations. And the question came up on, I think the fire department posted some pictures of the accident, nothing gruesome, of course, with the car and the trees and so forth. But a question was asked on that thread about who owns the trees. And the answer to that question is very simply whoever the landowner happens to be. Electrical utilities have an if you will, designated by the proximity and what the voltage is of the power lines. And they keep those rights of way clear. But as you can imagine, if you've got a power line running down a sewer road that has a 10-foot on each side of the conductor as a right-of-way, but you've got a 100-foot bullpine tree beside it, you know, the wires are only about 40, 45 feet up at the highest points. So if the tree comes down, and they take the wires down, they can snap poles off. It really matters not who owns the property. To my knowledge, I've never known any utility to go after a landowner when a tree has fallen. I know because of my work with utilities that there are countless trees that come down in high winds and storms and so forth, and bad weather, ice storms particularly, straight line winds, obviously tornadic activity. But when these things happen, the utility companies just go down the road and they put poles back in where they may have broken, they reconductor if they have to, or at least put the conductor back up on the poles and just move on. Nobody goes back after the landowner for the trees And I just want people to understand that, because it's a common question. You know, doesn't the landowner have a responsibility? Well, until somebody's willing to fight that fight, I don't see that ever changing. And I know right now it's become a little bit more difficult, even for the police departments in the state of New Hampshire, because of legislation that came out, I think, last year, in getting information from accidents resulting, damage resulting from motor vehicle accidents, and trying to get information, for the insurance companies or what have you. The information is a little bit more protected, but I don't want to get off on a tangent, which I typically do. But what I do want to say is, Chief gives good guidance. If you don't have to go out when we're in the middle of a thunderstorm, or you know bad weather's coming, don't do it. Because I get called when the weather goes south and I have to go to work in this stuff. And it's very nerve-wracking, especially when you're going in pitch black and you don't know what's coming down. And some nights it's, dodge the best that you can. So I encourage everybody to be mindful of the weather when venturing out, not just in the winter time, but this time of the year especially. So
I saw that post that you're referring to on the PD page, and I just want to say that, and I didn't quite know how to take it. And so, of course, I took it as a chief of police looking at this thing and saying, okay, this may be directed at the PD. And the first thing I want to say is, in order to commit a crime anywhere, but in order to commit a crime in the state of New Hampshire, a number of elements have to be met. And the first and foremost is always intent, right? You have to have intent to commit a crime. And we see this a lot with property disputes. And one person wants another person arrested because their fence is 2 feet over on the property or whatever, or they claim, or their driveway is over on somebody else's property. And those are probate issues. Those are not, there's no one criminal trespassing. That's not it. Right, these are probate issues, these are land issues, they need to be, we have a whole court that does nothing but land issues. And there, especially in something like that, there is no intent to commit a crime, okay? So you have to have intent to criminally trespass on somebody's property. So a tree falling on a car, there's no intent here. And I don't know the purpose of that post.
well, the question, I read it in a different manner.
I know you did.
I read it, or somebody looking at, potential litigation, whose fault is this? And
It's an act of
that's why I
God.
wanted to answer that question. It is truly an act of God. You can maintain your trees to the best of your ability and spend thousands of dollars doing it. But in a straight line wind, the healthiest of trees will not swing.
And this is the reason we have insurance.
Yeah.
Right? This is the whole purpose of having a whole industry that we call insurance. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission.
Do you have any questions so far?
I'm good. So, you gentlemen have the financials that I sent out, okay? They look like this, they're in your packets. And so we did some analysis on this. The good news is the PD is doing very well. Presently, we're approximately 4.01% underspent at roughly the halfway point through budget execution. We do have some over expenditures. Overtime is one of those areas that always seems to be overexpended. And so just let me talk a little bit about that, because that's one of our more significant over expenses with the police department. And the first thing I'm going to say is, when we overexpend in one area, we always like to balance that with an under expense in another area to help make up for it. That way we don't have any cost overruns or budget overrun. This year, we had one officer retire, and then we had a number of officers that we had to place on administrative leave for various purposes. And when that happens, that creates either an overtime expenditure, typically, or a part-time expenditure. We get a part-time police officer to cover that open shift, or those vacant shifts. So and I know the commission knows this, but for the knowledge of the general public, when an officer is out of duty for training or for vacation or for court or for some other legitimate purpose, administrative leave in this case, that shift must be covered. It has to be covered, right? And because we have calls for service throughout the course of the day. So when I say, and I know you gentlemen have heard me say this many times over, that the police department is a 24/7 business, what I'm referring to specifically is that we have officers assigned to shifts for very specific purposes. And there are certain protocols that require us to go to certain types of calls with 2 officers. And that's the reason the shifts are built like they are. So we have that mutual support and backup. A domestic violence call for service happens to be domestic violence, happens to be one of the more frequent calls that we get, you know, that a type of call for service. We typically don't send one officer to, by him or herself, to a domestic violence situation. They usually go there with 2 or more officers, depending on the call, and every call is a little bit unique and different. So having said that, things are a little bit different than they are in you know, general life, in civilian life. So for example, if you have a newspaper agency and one of your reporters is out because they're sick or they're on vacation, then maybe another reporter gets some extra work assignments, or that person's work assignments for the day or for the week are spread out among the staff. But we can't do that in the police department. We can't do that. I can't have one officer by him or herself, right? That doesn't work like that. So that's what when I mean, this is serious business, and this is 24/7. That's no joke, no form. So that's for the general, because I know some people say, well, you've said that before and I understand it. No, I don't think you really do. I don't think they really understand it. And so that's the reason. So yes, that will drive up the cost of overtime, and that's essentially one of the major reasons why we're seeing these overtime increases like we are, because they're due to shift coverage, the need and necessary part of policing business, right? It's the cost of doing business. I hate to brush it off like that, but it really is that simple.
Could I raise a question?
Yes, sir.
And again, it's part of my experience, but the midnight shift is only partially occupied by one officer for
That's
much
correct.
of that time.
That's
Has
correct.
there been an increase in time of duration of serious calls or calls that are more at this time than perhaps in the past, requiring that officer to spend a lot more time rushing from call to call and not having any backup or any assistance? Is it changing?
Yes, it is, but not necessarily in the dynamic that you explained. But yes, the answer to your question is yes. What we're seeing over the course of time, now remember, I've been here just over 25 years, and what we're seeing over the course of time, slowly, is not an increase in activity per se, but we're seeing an increase, a disturbing increase in some of our more violent severity of crimes and violent crimes. Last year, we had a number of shootings in town. We had a homicide in town. Through, I think, just diligent police work, Corporal Eric LaRochelle, for example, was able to identify the culprit in a attempted homicide, multiple attempted homicides, and was able to make a very quick arrest. Now that happened at 3 in the morning in that neighborhood, 2:50 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, something like that. And this was an individual who had fired multiple shots at several different people. So we're seeing an uptick in gun violence that really started in this town maybe probably 10 or 12 years ago. And I remember briefing the commission then when I was a lieutenant, saying, I think we need to have a serious discussion about that midnight shift. I'm really concerned and bothered by the fact that we only have one officer on that shift. Now, we try to mitigate that as best we can, but like everything else, it's difficult to do. And it takes resources and it takes money. That being said, just last week, the captain and I responded because we were busy doing other things. And what day was that, Thursday, Friday? I can't remember. Days and nights are blending together for me. But sometime last week, we responded to a shooting out on Sewell Road where, second?
Up first.
Oh, it was off Forest, that's right. What was I thinking? Yeah, right. It was Parker Island Road, yeah. I'm sorry, Parker Island Road. And we responded to a shooting. And Tuesday, thank you, where a fellow had, last week, a fellow had negligently discharged a firearm and put a hole in his knee. Actually put several holes in his knee, but that's a long story. We're not going to go into it. Yeah, these things do happen. And bad things do happen. When they happen, they typically happen after midnight.
It's kind of my experience, that's why I raised it. And it's still an issue that I hope is resolved satisfactorily in the future.
Well, you know, we will try.
I know.
We will try. We will try, and we'll move forward.
Chief, if I could just add to that, I think it's worth it. You should mention that people know that, you know, what type of assistance we can expect from like the state police and the sheriff's department can or cannot expect on the midnight shift. Maybe you can just brief over that real quick.
No, we can't. Yeah, and so listen, these organizations are great organizations, right? There's nothing wrong with the organizations themselves, but let's face it, New Hampshire is a rural state. We are a rural state. We have a lot of challenges, and one of those challenges is resources. Personnel are a resource. Right now, throughout the entire state, we're short on police officers. The state police is short on officers. A lot of the other agencies around us are short on police officers. Rochester, last I knew, Rochester was down 22 officers. They had 22 vacancies that they're trying to fill. The state police are off the road at 2 in the morning, and they may not be coming back until 6 in the morning or later. There are times that they may be off the road at midnight and won't be back until 6 or 8 o'clock in the morning. The Sheriff's Department routinely shutters its doors at 2300 hours, that's 11 p.m. So we can't really rely on those agencies to provide backup. And therein lies the problem. The agencies around us may or may not have an officer on duty depending on their personnel shortfalls. We have been, in this part of New Hampshire, the only 24/7 police department for the last 40 years. Certainly since Stan Stevens was chief of police. I think we have been the only 24/7 police department, as silly as that sounds. We have been the only 24/7 police department until you get to Conway. Historically, systemically, historically. Sure, there have been other agencies that have run 24-hour service in the summertime and when they can, but us in Conway are the only two agencies in Carroll County that I'm aware of that can systemically run 24-hour service. This brings up another point, another interesting point. It's a dilemma for me, and I have to provide guidance to my office. If we get a call to back up Alton or New Durham, which happened several years ago when New Durham was shut, we were constantly going over to New Durham, and some of those calls were 2, 3, 4 in the morning, which means that the Wolfeboro police officer has to now leave his patrol sector out of town to go back up another officer in another town. Now, we're happy to do that, but there's risk there. And we need to seriously understand what that risk is, and we need to look at that risk, and we need to make some decisions in the risk-reward benefit. And these are discussions I think that we, the captain and I, the police commission, need to have with the town manager and the board of selectmen and the budget committee at some point in the near future. Now that near future, could be, a year out, could be 2 years out, but I don't think we should be dodging this question much longer. I think if we do, it's gonna jump up and bite us in the backside.
I agree.
That's my professional assessment. Moving on, Mr. Chairman. So looking at your report, if you go to page 3 of your expenditure report, you're gonna see the police department percentage used number. And this is the quick way, gentlemen, to tell how we're doing. You're gonna see that's at 44.066% expended. And what we should be, if this were a perfect world, and we know it's not, we should be at 48%. So right now, we're approximately 4.01% underspent. Does that make sense? So, communications is a little bit, not quite as good as the police department, but it's still at a very healthy 3.21% underspent. And animal control is doing very well at 9.205% underspent. So we are moving in the right direction. Again, we try to balance some of our over expenditures with savings in other lines. The reason I do that is because this town functions off a bottom line budget. I know there are some that wanna move that to zero-based budgeting. The point is that I'm not gonna go over lines and spend in other lines regardless of that over expenditure, if that makes any sense, because that would cause an over expenditure. I want to come in at or just under the appropriate amount of money by the citizens. The citizens have voted on a specific appropriation, and we want to make sure that we meet that appropriation. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's the reason I'm not a big fan of zero-based budgeting.
You just touch on one thing.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned animal control. Do we have an update on his condition?
I can brief you in, I don't want to brief it in public. I'd like to brief it in non-public if that would be acceptable, sir. Yes, but yes, we do.
Because I know that this will change the budget.
It will change the budget, and I think that's something else that we're probably going to have to look at as well. But we can discuss that, and that would be part of the thing that we have to look at in fiscal year 2022. So we'll have plenty of budget discussions coming up on that. I want to give you gentlemen plenty of time to look at the budget, or assuming that you've already looked at it, do you have any issues specifically with the budget or the budget execution as we stand right now? I think we're in actually very good shape. I'm very comfortable with where we're at. I think we have enough buffer in case of an unexpected financial requirement. I'm always on the lookout for UFRs, but right now I'm very comfortable with where we're at and how we're executing the budget.
We're doing well, a lot easier than last year.
Yeah, a lot better than last year, actually. So
Goals and objectives.
moving on to goals and objectives, you gentlemen have my goals and objectives report. It looks like this, it's provided in the packet. The green are my comments, and I'll just go through those very quickly right now. So there are, for the public that's listening and here present with us today, I have 6 goals. Each one of those goals has a number of different objectives. Objectives are those little mini milestones you need to meet in order to achieve that objective, okay? Goals should be measurable, they should be attainable, and you should have some way to assess whether you're making or you're achieving or not achieving your goals and objectives. So with that, that's a quick primer on what a goal and objective is. And so with goal number 1, stay within the fiscal year 21 Wolfeboro Police Department operating budget parameters. Currently, we're on track at 44.066% spent. And currently, as of 30 June, we are 4.01% underspent. This is good. and the goal and objectives will continue into, for this goal and objective will continue into fiscal year 22. This is what I call a systemic reoccurring goal, along with the objectives. Some of the objectives may change, but this goal will always be number one. That shows the emphasis I place on staying within the allotted budget. Goal 2, complete the Wolfeboro Police Department dispatch console process and installation. This has been a multi-year process. Presently, we are caught up on our funding of the new dispatch console with one more year of funding at $150,000 to have the requirements fully funded and available to purchase and install the new dispatch console, hopefully in the new PD building. This goal and objective will continue into fiscal year 22. So all of that is moving in the right direction. And again, that will be part of our fiscal year 22 presentation to the Board of Selectmen, the Town Manager, and the Budget Committee. Goal 3, modernize Police Department headquarters, building and physical infrastructure, equipment, and improve police and information sharing communication technologies. The PD has been moving along at light speed, pun intended, on this goal. With the purchase of the FY21 budgeted Ford Explorer, the hybrid version, the donated Tesla Model Y, and our donated electric bike, we have exceeded by 1 year our objectives in this area. Additionally, not only did we complete the competitive New Hampshire safety grant application process early, but we were also awarded additional monies because of our commitment to their programs and our strong working relationship with New Hampshire Highway Safety. This goal will continue into fiscal year 22, along with most of the objectives, which will be reevaluated in October fiscal year 21 for the upcoming FY. Goal 4, enhance crime prevention, physical security posture of the town of Wolfeboro, provide a safe and secure environment through presence, patrols, and training. This is an ongoing core task of the PD. The PD has been engaged in several high-profile criminal investigation, drug cases, and traffic crash investigations this year. Our grants awarded by New Hampshire Highway Safety and New Hampshire Attorney General's Office significantly assist us in the execution of the objectives listed out in this goal activity. Both myself and my officers continue to receive high praise and accolades from the public and for the work performed. Though I will be the first to admit that sometimes we don't always get things right, we realize our mistakes, fix errors, and try to unring the bell and improve our work product to not make that same mistake twice. I think we're moving in the right direction with our enhanced crime patrol and physical security patrols that we run throughout town. And in fact, I know with our increased presence in a lot of areas, because we're now coming up to full strength, people have commented positively that they've seen an increase in the presence patrols throughout the town. Additionally, as I've said, we've had a number of high-profile drug cases and criminal cases that have ended with positive outcomes, and we're grateful for that. Goal number 5, standardize police department vehicles. This past year, the last of our Crown Victorias was removed from the fleet to make way for the newest Ford Explorer. This is a hybrid model which will help reduce gas and oil consumption, repair parts usage, and contribute to less noise and air pollution. This vehicle, when it arrives, will bring the fleet up to our requisite number of 11 police vehicles, 3 Ford Tauruses, so they break down 3 Ford Tauruses, 7 Ford Explorer Police Interceptors, and 1 Tesla Model Y. Once the Ford Tauruses reach their respective end-of-year service life, roughly at 10 years, we will replace them with Ford Hybrid Explorers. This goal may be modified in fiscal year 21.
We currently have 2 hybrids, correct?
Yes.
2 hybrid Explorers.
2 hybrids, and we've got presently, and we've got the third one should be arriving in October, November timeframe.
We hope.
So, yeah, they're like everything else. The supply chains were interrupted because of COVID-19, so it's sending ripples through the industry. Goal number 6: sustain police community outreach programs and relations. It is my sincere belief that we have managed to improve our community relations over this past year, mainly since we've been able to offer faster and better service as our staff component has been fully realized. We've been able to capitalize on this through our various radio and TV talk show programs, which garner a large following. This goal will continue into fiscal year 22 as a sustain. Gentlemen, subject to your questions, what can I address for you on the specific goals and objectives?
Anything more?
It's always in the details, and, you know, that's I think if we're going to be looking at the end of the year report, that should be more substantial to see where the whole thing breaks down. But right now, I'm happy with it.
One of the things I didn't mention is that we're on track for as to where we need to be relative to the building of the new public safety building, a new police station. So that process is moving in the right direction. I know the town manager just authorized the architects to do a more detailed development of their plans and processes. So more to follow on that, but right now everything seems to be moving in the right direction. We're looking at a new police station sometime around FY23.
I think we're all set with the questions in that matter. I guess our selectmen's representative left. But we do have our liaison from the budget committee. Tom, did you have anything?
No, the report was very concise, very complete. Perhaps the only thing would be, you know, a forward look on any line item that, you know, is problematic.
Absolutely.
And, you know, raise that at any point so that we can bring that to the budget committee just to keep them appraised.
Yeah, the only line item that I find is problematic is the overtime line.
Right.
And I'd like to maybe see that come up to a 5-year average. I'm not sure it's at a 5-year average, but that may be difficult to do.
And also, I think there's some discussion about moving some funds to the town on, you know, the patriotic piece.
I'm in total agreement with that, and so let me just brief the commission and get everybody a foundation. So about 3 years ago, Bob Lohman and Bob Lohman is a member of the budget committee, we're having a discussion about police overtime and drilling down and looking at some fidelity and getting greater clarity on where police overtime is spent. So whether it's spent on patrol or criminal investigation or shift coverage, we have about 7 different areas that overtime is broken down into. And the discussion came up about overtime usage during the 4th of July festivities or activities. So this would be the fireworks and the parade. So during the parade and then later during the fireworks, the entire police department is working, and a considerable number of dispatchers are also brought in in an overtime status. But the entire police department is on duty, and as such, that's an expensive day for the Wolfeboro Police Department. It's an expensive operation to do, and I think this may have come up as kind of a sidebar conversation in the budget committee about a month ago. When they were looking at police overtime, and I think it was Mr. Johnson, Steve Johnson, was concerned about that, and I think it was Bob Tuffer that said, hey, some of these things aren't necessarily discretionary for the police department. So for example, 4th of July parade, the traffic control and then the traffic control and safety that occurs during the fireworks, the evening fireworks, you know, those operations have to go on, and the chief has no alternative other than to put those on. So in order to gain better clarity on that, Bob Lohman, Mr. Lohman, and it's an idea that I totally support, said, why don't we take that amount of money, whatever it is, whatever amount of money it is, whether it's $8,000 or $10,000 or $12,000, whatever it costs you to put on that particular operation, move that over to whoever is responsible for that operation. So for example, it's not the Wolfeboro Police Department parade. It's not my parade. Although I think a lot of people think it is. It's not my parade. It's not my fireworks display. We don't put on the fireworks display, right? That's not a Wolfeboro Police Department function. Normally, if Dave Ford needed traffic control for a project, he would build that into his budget. And then we would go out and we would provide the detail support and bring in the extra officers in the form of the detail. When the Parks and Rec director puts on the Granite Man and the Granite Kid and whatever, the Turkey Trot, and whatever road events that she's putting on, she plans and she puts in her budget the monies to hire detail officers, and we bring those extra officers on so as not to interrupt the normal operations and flow. Because if we didn't do that, we would have, and this is, I know you gentlemen understand, this is for the public, if I have 2 guys on traffic duty and then we get a domestic, I can't leave the traffic duty to go to the domestic, right? I mean, that wouldn't be good.
This actually, I think, lends to a even better outcome, if you will, from moving this money to that line, in that maybe we don't have to engage all of our police officers on that day to those specific events. We could have some people available to handle local issues.
We could, and the other thing it would allow me to do too, and morale is always an issue. It's always something that I worry about, and it would allow me to go ahead and either by seniority or by lottery, whatever, offer up days off, 4th of July holiday off, to 1 or 2 officers, and then hire officers from another jurisdiction of the Sheriff's Department or the State Police if they want to work a detail for the local police department. So it makes sense. It makes sense from the morale standpoint. It makes sense from the clarity standpoint in getting fidelity on where this money is being spent. It gives a true cost to what it would cost the town to run a 4th of July event, as opposed to the indirect budgeting, because that's how we do it now. We indirectly budget for the 4th of July, and how that's done is you say, okay, I got 14 police officers in an apartment, and this is how much overtime, and we divide that overtime by the number of officers that we have, and that comes out with a flat number, right? And that's how you're indirectly budgeting for that particular piece of overtime. And that's the way it's always been done. And I would be the first one to say, I think it's smart of Bob Lohman to look at that and say, just because that's the way it's always been done doesn't mean it's necessarily the right way to do it. And I would agree with that, and I totally support his idea. It's his idea, not mine. I just happen to agree with it. And I think we should. I think that the police commission should, and we can discuss this in non-public if you gentlemen like, but I think the police commission should make the request, respectfully make that request to the Board of Selectmen, and have that money, whatever it costs, we can figure it out, whatever it costs, move that money right out of the police department budget and put it into either the patriotic line. I don't know if that's the town manager's budget or Christine Collins' budget. I did speak to Christine Collins about this briefly, and she's supportive of it. She thinks it makes total sense. So, and she did tell me that she has a patriotic line, so I think it may be in her budget. But the point is, she's in favor of it. She thinks it makes all the sense in the world, and I would like to see that happen. And I think it would drill down and give us greater clarity on how overtime is being spent and by what category. It just makes sense.
I agree.
Well, and we do it now for other events, right? And why we're not doing it for this event is beyond me. But thank you for bringing that up. I completely had forgotten about that, but I think that's an excellent point. And I applaud Bob for coming up with the idea.
I've skipped over Commissioner's items. Our next meeting, which is next month, will be Thursday, August 19th. We will continue to meet here at the library. Hopefully next month, one way or another, we will have a flag here. Theirs seem to have gotten lost in the renovation, which is why we skipped the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't typically do that, but okay. Do we have any public input this afternoon, or anything going forward? Okay. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion and enter into RSA 91-A to discuss
Personnel policy,
Personnel policy.
uniform, changing the uniform,
Yeah.
and appearance policy.
Do I have a motion on that?
Move.
Moved by Commissioner Bryan, seconded by Commissioner Coop. Roll call vote in this matter. Commissioner
Yes.
Bryan? Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Coop is a yes. Commissioner Wood is yes. I will stand in recess while we clear the room for non-public, and thank you all for being here.